Well, in an earlier clip we looked at the Marconi Mk3 camera, and now we're going to have a look at its CCU and power supply. This great pile of power here is it, but the actual CCU is this small section here, and I'm just going to pull it out. Like that. All the components are on the top surface and the valves are poking downwards underneath. There's just a few minor controls on the wiring area, but there's lots of scope for poking at components and getting an electric shock. That can go back in. The principal controls are along here. There's gain, target, image focus, line shading, multifocus. This is a useful little one here, a very important switch. This controls the neutral density filter wheel. Later cameras used a servo system to control the iris. The Marconi Mk3 has a neutral density filter, and it can be opened and closed with this switch to control the exposure. There's a few minor controls underneath there, and there's a little meter there that gives you an indication of the position of the neutral density filter, so that you know how near you are to one end or the other end of its range. Now above it is the picture and waveform monitor. At that time it was the custom for it to be all in one unit. The principal controls are here. The minor controls here. A red light and a green light. The green light is interesting. It's no longer green. Due to age it's gone amber. Tempus fugit. Now I'm going to pull this one out so we can have a look at it. Did you hear it go click? Very reassuring. Now, where to start? Well, that's the CRT housing, and here is the line scan and frame scan departments. There's a load of valves poking out the back, and this box here is the EHT generator. It doesn't use flyback EHT, it has a separate oscillator and rectifier to give a stable EHT supply. Spin it round. And the other side is not as exciting, but there's components here. It's interesting to consider the durability of some of the components. These resistors, old-fashioned as they are, usually are within their tolerance range, and these smaller ones may have drifted a bit in value, but the design is such that it can allow for this. Capacitors are a bigger problem. Those are original, and I've left them in because although they may be a bit leaky and not very nice, as with the resistors, the circuit is sufficiently tolerant of changes not to be a problem. That one has been changed to a more modern one, and that one has been changed to a new old stock one. Right, I'm going to push this back now. The waveform monitor is quite small, but it is large enough to give you an indication. You wouldn't use it for critical measurements. All you're interested in as a camera operator is the white level and the black level. Now, having looked at that, further down is the power supply. Another big lump, so I'm going to spin it round so we can have a look inside. So basically it's a big linear regulated power supply. It makes 250 volts DC at an amp. None of this 50 or 100 MA business, it does an amp. Now there are 6 rectifiers in parallel and a number of 60-80 double triodes also in parallel, and boy does it get hot. Not only does it get hot, there's a fan, but one of the more interesting features of this power supply is the portable version. The rack mount version used a big transformer and it was heavy, but in order to fit the unit in this standard case size, they had a problem with the big heavy transformer, so the solution was rather remarkable. That's the transformer in there, and it's blown. The fan cools the transformer. It's a sort of loose thing, and without the fan the transformer would seriously overheat, and the fan then blows up through here to cool the valves. Over here are the smoothing capacitors. They're all gone brown with age, but the last time I ran this camera I reformatted them and they are sufficiently satisfactory to continue in use without changing them. I do feel that there is a lot of unnecessary changing of components. Sometimes it's best to go with what you've got. There's a further feature of this power supply. When the Marconi Mk3 first came out, it used the smaller 3-inch Image Orthicon tube, and that worked fine, and this power supply was capable of supplying 75 milliamps regulated current to the focus coil in the camera. Now when the 4.5-inch tube came out, it required more current for the much larger focus coil, and it required something of the order of 140 milliamps, and this power supply wasn't up to it. So shortly I will show you the bodge that gets around that. Looking at the front of the power supply, there's a meter, a switch to select what the meter reads, principally the output current for each valve, so that you can see if one valve is not pulling its fair share of the work. And this other big switch here is interesting. Remember, this is the portable outside broadcast version, so your mains voltage might be all over the place. And this is the tapping switch for the input to the transformer, so that you can tap it down to 210, 190, or whatever your voltage you might be lucky enough to get. We'll have a look at the back now. The back of the power supply is not very exciting. There's the inlet for the fan, inlet for mains, mains outlet to loop on to the next unit, and the regulated current and voltage which goes up to the input there. Outputs, position for sinks and pulses. The camera requires a full set of monochrome pulses, that's line drive, field drive, mixed blanking and mixed sinks. There's also cues and talkback go in there as well. Now this big connector here, that's the connector that goes off to the camera, and I'm going to hold up the end of the camera cable so that you can have a look and consider how convenient and flexible it is. This is the Mk3 camera cable. That's BICC, British Insulated Calendar Cables, Mk3. The cable was used on the Marconi Mk3, the Pi Mk3 and a number of other cameras. It was the thing to have at that point in the early 50s. Now then, here it is. As you can see, it's very light and flexible and a joy to use. Here is one end with the protective cap. Thus. The cable is described in the cable section of TV Camera Museum. So that's the cable. You could join quite a few of them together. The other end, the socket end, these were referred to as the near end because that's what went into the CCU, and this end was the far end or the camera end for the camera, and it was really disappointing to roll your cable out the wrong way round. Now, earlier on I mentioned the 3-inch Image Orthicon tube and the focus supply current required of 75 MA. The 3-inch tube was the first one developed, and it was a very good tube, but it wasn't quite satisfactory, and EEV developed a better version, but it was bigger. It was called the 4.5-inch tube, and it required more focus current. Now, the existing Marconi Mk3 power supply was good for 75 MAs, but not for the 140 MA that was required for the larger tube. So, Marconi produced an add-on unit. This was a small rack mount unit that did 1 or 2 cameras, or a portable unit that did 4 cameras. Now, these authentic Marconi focus supplies are like hen's teeth, they are not to be had anywhere. So in order to make our camera work, I had to set to and make one, and here it is. It doesn't look right, the inside is different, but functionally it is the same. So I'll pull it out and we can have a quick look at the inside. It's chasing me. Perhaps that's as far as it comes. So there's a big transformer, some paper smoothing capacitors, a couple of small valves there, and I know at the back there's the regulator pass valve. No, it's not going to come out easily, so I'm not going to push my luck by trying to force it. That can go back in. And here is the control to set the focus current and the meter to measure it. That's the replacement focus power supply, and that describes the Marconi Mk3 CCU power supply and picture and waveform monitor in a nutshell.